U.S. government has indicted Volkswagen's former CEO in the ongoing fallout over the emissions cheating scandal. Now, the charges against Martin Winterhorn include wire fraud, violating the Clean Air Act, and conspiracy to defraud Volkswagen's American customers. U.S. authorities are now prosecuting 9 people over VW's past efforts to fake diesel emissions levels to fool regulators. 2 former engineers have now pled guilty. Winterhorn is the highest-ranking auto official to face U.S. criminal charges in a series of recent industry scandals. 3 executives at Japanese airbag maker Takata were charged over the cover-up of a fatal airbag defect. No individuals have been indicted over major safety issues at both Toyota or GM. New York Times correspondent Jack Ewing literally wrote the book on all of this, the Volkswagen scandal. He joins me now, though, from Frankfurt. It is true that you wrote the book on it, and I wonder what your reactions are now to the fact that we have someone, a former CEO, actually having to face criminal charges. What do you think it means?
Well, I think the big question from the very beginning was how high up did this go? What was the knowledge of top management? And there's been a lot of documents and other evidence that did indicate that probably it was known at the top levels. And it was also just always hard to believe that something this big, software installed in 11 million cars over almost a decade, that could have taken place without top management knowing. But now that the federal government has actually indicted the former chief executive, then we have, I guess you could say, official confirmation of that, or like, an official allegation.
You know, when you wrote this book, you had said that this corporate culture turned toxic. This whole corporate culture at VW may also now be criminal. In fact, it's already proven criminal because some people have pled guilty. Having said that, what has allowed this to happen? Because obviously, if you're sitting here with all of these air quality regulations and emission standards that you have, Americans and others are wondering, how did this go on for so many years?
Well, that is an interesting question, but I think it goes back to the fact that nobody really expected anybody to do something like this. There have been cases like this going back many years. There have been cases involving diesel trucks, but when Volkswagen started selling diesels in the United States, that was the novelty. There just weren't that many of them, and I think the regulators it just wasn't on their radar screen. And it was, in a way, sort of by accident that it was discovered in the first place. Just some researchers at West Virginia University sort of stumbled upon it. I think the answer was just that no one in the United States paid that much attention to diesel.
And VW put the diesel car on the map in North America with fraudulent, just outright lying as to whether or not there were emissions. Do you think that they will find, and I know you've investigated this already, that there actually was a conspiracy to cover this up, that evidence was destroyed, that they out and out lied?
Yeah, there's no question about that. There was evidence destroyed when this was about to explode, when Volkswagen knew they were about to get caught. An in-house lawyer sort of signaled to everybody they should check their documents, and a lot of people, something like 40 people, took that as a signal to start destroying computer files and paper documents. So there's no question that this was a big conspiracy. That the German prosecutors say they're investigating more than 50 people. But it's taken a long time for it to sort of become a criminal case, for them to file criminal charges, just because it is so big.
But it does send a strong message to others. And I hate to be trite, but it's a Friday afternoon, so I'll go ahead. The moral of this story, especially when we're in an environment of deregulation now in the United States, let's face it, the entire business community is applauding the deregulation.
Yeah, well, it shows that regulators here, it wasn't just about clean air. They also prevented a German company from competing unfairly in the United States. I think people forget that. It wasn't just about the environment. It was also about fair competition, and that was discovered by regulators in California and at the EPA.
And so the moral is we can expect this, that they'll say lesson learned. Other corporations will look at VW and say, I could end up in jail if I try and continue with this.
I think the strongest message you can send to other executives that might be thinking about something like this is that you could wind up going to jail. And that's another unique thing about Mr. Winterhorn being indicted, is that a lot of these cases, you see mid-level people arrested and charged, but very the chief executive, as you mentioned. And so I think that's very significant.